Joseph, it's great to have you at the Dubai FinTech Summit, and you heading the Relm Insurance company for long. Tell us about your journey of how you have been going through the entire process of setting up the company till the phase you are right now here.
So you want the backstory?
Yes.
Okay. So we ended up launching in Bermuda in December of 2019 as a specialty insurance carrier, and the focus of Realm was really to provide informed and dedicated capacity to companies operating in innovative and emerging industries. But before we get to the actual operating proposition, I think it's more important to understand kind of that moment of enlightenment, right? Where we said we need to create Realm in order to enable these companies. And a lot of it has to do with when I bought Bitcoin for the first time in 2017, right? That was the first time that I had an opportunity to really look into the distributed ledger technology, blockchain industry, and realize that beyond the headline risk that everybody saw back then with Mt. Gox failing and rug pulls and the Silk Road, there were actually really credible companies that were building important products and solutions on top of this technology, distributed ledger technology, that at its core brought transparency, efficiency, accessibility, immutability, right? All things that we would agree are good and have the power to transform traditional industries, right? And the idea was that if there's a scaling momentum of companies building really important products and solutions on top of this really important technology, they're going to need to raise capital. They're going to need to enter into contracts with other companies. They're going to need to get regulated. They're going to need to provide safe custody of other people's valuable things. And all of that requires insurance, right? And the one thing that I think a lot of people understand about the insurance industry is that it always lags behind the pace of innovation. So whenever you see a new industry sector emerging or a new technology becoming relevant, the insurance industry by design is going to be 5 to 10 years behind that sector with support. And so what we wanted to do was position an insurance company that was directly aligned with products and solutions designed to support and enable companies doing new and innovative things. And so that nexus really took place in 2017, 2018. We spent a year working with the Bermuda regulatory authorities, the BMA, to get comfortable with this proposition of insuring companies that the rest of the market didn't want to insure. And then we moved into the market definitively with some important products. So that's the background. Does that make sense?
So, it makes sense, not just sense. I want to know what's your interest behind running into an insurance industry and starting a company there.
Well,
What was your experience like, before you can a layman start an insurance company and run into as successful as you are?
yeah. So I think my personal starting point in the insurance industry, when I look back on it today, was really important. So I came in to the insurance industry in a pretty backwards way through a really important niche of the insurance sector. So the non-life insurance sector is a $6 trillion market. I was operating in a very small niche called alternative risk transfer, right? So, and it's commonly referred to as the ART sector, alternative risk transfer. And the reason that was such an important area for me to be focused is because anything traditional is handled by the general kind of traditional insurance and reinsurance marketplace. But whenever you have a complex risk or a company that wants to utilize a risk financing strategy, they look to the alternative insurance and risk transfer market. And so I spent 8 years working with companies that were looking to achieve outcomes that were impossible through the traditional insurance market. And so I was using regularly insurance and reinsurance infrastructures to solve problems or create solutions working in US and non-US markets. And it was really that 8 years of flexibility, creativity, product innovation that gave me a really important perspective on how to navigate complex risks in an otherwise very traditional and rigid industry sector.
Joseph, you had so much experience at that point of time. That's, maybe a person like me would find it hard to figure out. But I want to ask you one thing. What is the main pain point that you found out with most of these companies were facing when it comes to understanding insurance?
So, I think the pain point that companies encounter when they're trying to obtain insurance for themselves is that if insurance is a backwards looking industry, right, that means it looks to the past to inform the future. right? And when we say it looks to the past, it's looking at a big historical data set. And it uses that historical data set to literally predict the future frequency and severity of loss for a particular exposure. And so when that historical data exists, the insurance industry works surprisingly well. But when that historical data doesn't exist, the insurance industry doesn't come to the table. So you have a classic supply demand mismatch. You've got companies in an increasing volume that need certain types of insurance products, but you have a complete lack of informed capacity that's coming to the table. And so the challenge for any, you know, founder or risk officer or finance executive that knows how important it is to be appropriately insured, but facing a market where there are so few options, is a lot of administrative challenge, a lot of lack of understanding that puts companies in a position where it's really hard to get basic insurance that they need to scale their business.
Joseph, you do you think that there is a lack of awareness when it comes to insurance products? You know, companies understanding the right way of understanding insurance products in the market. And you think what are the ways where we can mitigate that gap of awareness in this market?
Now, do you mean companies like operating companies about
Yes.
understanding the types of coverages that they
Yes.
should be?
It should
Yeah.
be used.
So, I mean, I think it's natural that as a founder of an early stage company in an innovative and emerging industry, you're laser focused on commercial viability, right? You're laser focused on building products, getting product market fit, and achieving revenue growth. But while you're rationally laser focused on these things, an afterthought for almost every company is how do we how do we manage risk? How do we ensure the resilience of our own balance sheet? How are we ensuring the sustainability of our company's operations? And I think the point, that kind of that paradigm shift should be where founders should acknowledge that if they approach risk management earlier from a more sophisticated perspective, they become more attractive from an investment standpoint. They become more attractive from a regulatory standpoint. So in a sea of other companies that are trying to build the next digital asset exchange or the next borderless payment and remittance platform or the next large block crypto OTC trading desk, if you're the company that's out ahead of the rest with the appropriate insurance, right, and an evolved approach to managing the risk of your business, you become differentiated. And that is, I think, a powerful thing for a lot of companies in an early phase to learn about and manage the, risk management as a whole.
Tell us about what is the next space that's going to be big when it comes to insurance and technology. Is it which space would be the next big thing that we should be looking on, or even as a person of not from the insurance background, which space he should be very curious on understanding and learning about?
So I think the most relevant one, especially for the conference we're at today, is artificial intelligence and deep technology. And we have these debates internally all the time. When we're talking about sector appetite, is artificial intelligence really a sector, or is that a foundation, right? Because if we look at the proliferation of artificial intelligence today, maybe it's confined to certain sectors more so than others. But if we think about where artificial intelligence is going to be 12, 24, 36 months from now, it's going to be embedded in the foundation of every single industry. And while the integration of AI in healthcare and finance and logistics and real estate is going to happen, it's also going to give rise to a bunch of unique exposures to loss that the traditional insurance market really isn't prepared to accommodate, right? And so where you've got, again, a momentum of a new technology that's going to enable companies to do new and different things, you're going to have an insurance market that is waiting to understand where those losses are going to manifest themselves. And for that period of time, it's going to be really difficult for companies to get appropriately insured when they're relying heavily on different types of AI systems.
Joseph, if I say with data analytics and AI, I can, if I am adding it to my insurance portfolio of figuring out things, would I be able to overtake or come above the traditional insurance sector with these sort of technologies in hand, with my insurance company doing well in this, all the other platforms doing well. Would that be a possibility?
So are you saying, could you approach your current insurer
Yes.
with your ideas about utilizing this new technology and
Yes.
expect that your insurance company would give you the support you're looking for?
Yes.
It's hard to say. I would say if history were any indication, it's unlikely. And I think, and it makes sense, right? Even if you've got absolute alignment with your incumbent insurer, if you're going to be heavily relying on this new technology for the first time for important decisions or commercial generating capabilities or a service that you're providing to other companies, without a successful operating track record of utilizing that technology in a way that's profitable and not one that creates and aggregates liability, it might be difficult for a traditional insurance company to get their arms around the idea of expanding coverage for you doing something that you haven't really ever done before. But I think it would be that would be my first step if I was you, running a company using AI for the first time. I would go to my current market and see what their appetite would be.
Okay. Let me ask you about your latest license that you have got out of the central bank. Tell us about the approval of, and now you're entering the Web3 insurance space as well. Talk about the Sigma Web3 and the licensing that you've just acquired recently.
Sure. So, as we sit here today, we have Relm Insurance MENA, which is a Category 4 licensed insurance intermediary domiciled here in the DIFC, regulated by the Dubai Financial Services Authority. As part of the launch of that entity, which is really designed to maximize the accessibility of our products and solutions for companies operating in the MENA market, we've partnered with Leva Insurance Group, which is a local insurance partner. And with Leva, we've approached the central bank for approval for what we consider to be two really important products. The first one is Sigma, which you referenced, which is a package policy that includes a number of really important coverage parts, ranging from directors and officers liability to professional liability, cyber crime, and a few other really important coverages. And the point of that product is to make sure that we're maximizing the efficiency that companies can leverage to gain access to the most important coverages that they need to scale their business. As opposed to having to go to one broker for D&O, another broker for cyber, we can solve all of those problems with one solution. And then the second product, which we call Sigma Vara, is an insurance product that is literally designed to accommodate companies seeking authorization from the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority, right? So as a condition of obtaining a license through Vara, you have to have minimum limits of insurance for D&O, professional liability, and crime. And so we have a product that puts companies in a position to not only obtain those coverages, but satisfy regulatory requirements to facilitate a more efficient licensing and approval process.
Joseph, it was a pleasure to talking to you and wonderful insights. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.